Hey tribe, Sally here. Hope you're having an amazing and fascinating day. I know I am. Yep, there's my kit. What you doing, Kit? You looking outside? You looking at the people? So I'm in an RV park and I'm taking advantage of the fact that I've got full power. I mean, I can do this without being plugged in. I do it all the time. But because I have full power and because it's going to be cold over the next couple of days, I'm taking advantage of the time to do some food prep. And this means that because I'm in explore mode right now, I'm sightseeing, I'm checking stuff out. I got a lot of things to look forward to. And one of the things that I always look forward to, as I'm sure you know, is eating healthy, for the most part, foods. And sometimes it seems like taking the time to make those foods is more time and effort than I want to put into it, especially when I've been out exploring all day, I've done a hike, whatever, I'm tired, I just want to eat. So today, I'm making chili con carne. And I'm doing it while I'm here because it's going to be a pretty big batch and I'll be able to freeze several portions. And then basically I've got a boil-in bag. Remember boil-in bag stuff? I mean, I think that was like from the 70s or 80s maybe. But because I use the vacuum sealer, and I've been doing this, I've done it a number of times. I use the vacuum sealer and I'll seal a portion with the vacuum sealer. And then when I'm ready to eat it, I just cover the bag with water and boil it for a few minutes, 5-10 minutes until it gets hot. And then I don't have a pot to clean, so that's nice. And I don't have that mess to clean up and wipe up, so that's nice. And then I use the hot water left over from boiling the bag for any dishes that I've made that still need to be cleaned up. So it's kind of a win-win-win all the way around. Anyway, back to the chili con carne. Oh, I guess before we get there, let me say thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate you taking your time to watch my videos. And a big shout out to my channel members. Stay tuned to the end to see the credits roll with their names listed. And if you want to consider becoming a channel member, there'll be a QR code over here. You can scan that, or you can click the link in the video description down below. And check it out. Might be something that's interesting to you. Certainly helps out my channel and helps me be able to continue to bring you videos. Because it's, it's kind of like a dopamine boost. I have to be honest about that. So, without further ado, let's roll the intro. And then we're going to talk about chili and beans.
Wake up with the sun in our eyes. Sally forth, no need for goodbyes. Journey calls, let's roll the dice. Every mile a new surprise.
And we're back. Let's talk about beans. I realized I get plenty of protein. Now, many people, vegans especially, they say eat a lot of beans because they're high protein. That's not why I eat beans. I eat beans because they're high fiber. And getting enough fiber is usually a bigger issue for me because I eat so much protein. So, it's one of the reasons I've been trying to incorporate more beans into my life. Plus, they're cheap, they're inexpensive, so it's an easy way to be frugal with what your food intake is going to be. There's somebody out with another little puppy running along beside them. Fortunately, Kit's sleeping through that one, yay. So we're not having a bark fest. So they're inexpensive, they're high fiber, they're fairly high protein as vegetables go, legumes go. And they have a lot of other nutrients that are really good for you, and they keep forever. Now, you can go to the store and you can buy beans in a can. But, and I do keep a couple of cans of beans on hand just in case I want to do something and I don't want to, or don't have enough power to be able to run the Instant Pot to make beans from scratch. But most of the beans that you buy in cans are not just beans. They have something else added to them that may or may not be something that you wanted. And for the most part, I want to cook just beans and then incorporate them in other dishes or with other spices or whatever to make the meal that I want to have. So for example, a couple of weeks ago, I made lima beans. And when I was a kid, my mother used to buy, I don't know what she bought, but I didn't like them. I thought lima beans were awful. And I love dried lima beans, reconstituted. And all I did was, I made the lima beans and I cooked them with a couple of bay leaves, a little bit of garlic, and some thyme. And then I just made a big portion of beans as my dinner that night. And, I cooked them in those seasonings. And then I put them in a bowl and I added a little butter and shaved Parmesan Asiago Romano blend cheese, because that's high in calcium, which I'm trying to keep my calcium intake up, as you know, hoping to get this foot to heal eventually, hopefully. And it was just delicious. I mean, I so enjoyed that. And then, I had a bunch of leftovers, and I was throwing them cold into salads, and just, you can do all kinds of things with them, stir fries, whatever. So today I'm making chili con carne. And I love chili con carne. And I'm using the same recipe that I've been using basically since the 70s when I got my very first pressure cooker, which was a Presto pressure cooker. And I have adapted it a little bit, but it's basically the Presto pressure cooker recipe from the Presto pressure cooker cookbook from the 70s. Go figure. Except in that case, they had you using canned beans because, I don't know, I think they were trying to get with modern conveniences then. Like, it's much more convenient to dump a can of beans in with the meat that you've just browned and the onions. And then, put the pressure cooker lid on and cook it for however long. But I've really been enjoying going back to dried beans. So, cans versus dried beans. You're not getting any potential additives in dried beans, except maybe stones. You got to pick out stones sometimes. I never seem to find any. It's not an issue for me, but whatever. But you're not getting any potential additives that the manufacturer has added, crazy chemicals, extra salt, stuff you don't necessarily want. And dried beans are lighter to store than canned beans. So a pound of dried beans is, usually it's a little over 2 cups actually. A cup of dried beans makes at least 2 cups of cooked beans. So you buy 1 pound of dried beans, and I haven't looked at them in the store lately. I'll tell you why in a second. I haven't bought any in the store lately, but I seem to recall that dried beans are still under like $1 a pound, right? So super cheap. Whereas a can of beans, 14.5 ounces, is really about maybe 1.5 cups of beans in that can. And they are typically, that 1.5 cups of beans is typically going to cost you somewhere between $1.50 and $2.50, depending on what brand you're buying and what additives it has and all the other stuff that could be. And then, for the most part, you don't want the juice that's in the can with the beans, so you got to use extra water to be able to get that off of there. And why on earth is the juice in the canned beans so thick? I've never understood that, because it's not like that when you cook beans from scratch. So, all of that said, we're going to get busy making chili, starting with cooking some beans. So I'm going to get the camera flipped around, going to show you what that process is like, and then we're going to get moving on this. And one of the reasons I'm doing this today, while I'm sitting still in an RV park, is the way that I'm choosing to do it is fairly time-consuming in terms of total time, but it doesn't take a whole lot of time to do any of the steps. So it's a process. I mean, I'm starting with dried beans. Oh, and I didn't say this. My beans I bought in 2013. My beans are, 12 years old? I got 12-year-old beans. And that's what I cooked the lima beans from 2013, a couple weeks ago, and they were fine. Because they don't really go bad. If you're storing them properly, if they're dry and, airtight container, they're fine, and they'll last virtually forever. The nutrients are still there. They do take longer to cook the older they are, as compared to younger beans. So, like, my Instant Pot recipes usually say 12 to 18 minutes to cook up, beans, but I'm cooking these for like 25 minutes because they're that old. So, we're going to get the camera flipped around, and I'll show you what the process is. I'll tell you what my timing is, and I'll try and remember to tell you what the timing is for younger beans as well. All right, here's my Instant Pot. I know you've seen this a time or 2 or 3. So what we've got going on, we're getting ready to do the pre-soak process for the beans. And I have my strainer basket inside of my Instant Pot. And this is kind of a hack for RV life. If you're in a sticks and bricks, you don't have to do what I'm doing here. It's actually much easier to just put the beans in the pot, cover them with an inch of water, and you're good to go. However, I don't want to pour the bean water down my sink in order to strain the water off of the beans when they're done pre-soaking. And if I just had them in the pot and put a strainer in the sink, that's what I'd end up doing. I put as few food particles down my sink as I possibly can, because that's what makes the sink smell. So what do I do with the water? If I'm in a place where it's appropriate, I'll just take this pot after I've pulled the beans out of it, and I'll dump the water outside. If I'm in a place where that's not appropriate, I will dump the water, I'll let it cool a little bit, and then I'll dump it into the toilet. And so that's why I use the strainer basket, because I'm not going to put, a colander over the toilet and dump the beans out. That would just be crazy. That would be totally crazy. So this system works really well for me. But if you're in a house and you don't care about putting stuff down your sink, that's fine. You don't need to do this. You can just put the beans straight in the pot. So for this first step, I put the beans in the pot. This is a cup of beans. These are small red beans, not kidney beans. I like small red beans better in my chili. And I picked through them. I looked for stones or debris and didn't see any. So I got a pound of beans in here. A cup of beans in here. And we're going to go ahead and put the lid on. Now remember, this is the pre-soaking portion of this. And this is why it takes a while. So the first thing we're going to do is pre-soak, and I'm going to get this started. I'm going to hit pressure cook. And we're going to do 3 minutes. And then when it's done, we're going to do a quick natural release, which I'll show you again at the end of this section. So again, this is just the pre-soak. So why do we pre-soak? Well, pre-soaking removes some impurities. Impurities isn't a fair word. There are phytonutrients, basically, that are present in beans that are not beneficial to you. Those are the things that cause bloating and gassiness and stuff like that. So if you get rid of those by pre-soaking, and I didn't understand this for a long time, because you don't have to pre-soak beans when you're pressure cooking them. You can just dump them in the pressure cooker and cook them, and they'll be fine. But the other thing that this allows me to do, because my beans are antiques, is at the end of the pre-soaking method, if there are beans that are floating on top of the water, I'll remove those. Beans should be sunk on the bottom, not floating on top. So the ones that are floating on top are not ideal. And there's usually half a dozen or so of those, and I'll just throw those away, no big deal. So that's why you pre-soak. And we're going to wait for this to happen, and then once it does, as I said, we'll do the quick natural release, and then we'll be ready to cook the beans. And then once we've got the beans cooked, then we'll be ready to make the chili. So this is why I'm doing this while I'm sitting in an RV park and not doing anything else all day long, because I can be doing other things while all of this is happening in the kitchen. I can be editing videos, I can be doing house cleaning, I can be watching TV, I can be playing games, whatever. I can do lots of other things. So we'll get back to you at the next stage. One of the very cool things about cooking beans is that precision is not required. So I kind of lost track of this, and they finished about 20 minutes ago, so they're not fully pressurized. But here's how you do a slow quick release, or a quick natural release. Basically, you're just going to partially release the pressure, and because this sat for so long, it was already pretty much released. And now, they smell good. Let's get this back up on the counter. Oof. And close the door so Kit doesn't leave. And we're going to open this up and take a look. Well, it's still steamy. There we go. And we don't have any floaters. Yay! Okay, so I'm going to pull my basket and drain my beans. And then I got to get rid of my bean water. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to start over. See how red that is? So this round of the quick soak, and just so you know, I mean, these beans are still hot. They're hot for sure. very hard to the touch. So they're not cooked. This is just the pre-soak stage. And they're looking pretty daggone good. You can see, like, here's the skin. So we'll pull the skin out of there. We don't need to leave that behind. But it's not hurting anything if I do. All right, so let me get this water dumped. And then we're going to come back and we're going to cook the beans. Be right back. And this looks an awful lot like it did just a minute ago. But I have dumped out the old water and I put in fresh water. Now, if I were going to be planning to eat these as a side dish like I did with the lima beans, I'd be seasoning them at this point. But I'm not planning on that. I'm just going to cook them plain because they're going to get seasoned along with the chili. So this time, we're going to set the pressure cooker for 22 minutes, I think. And we'll go 23. Because these beans are old. I mean, normally I'd be going like 12 to 18 minutes. And it'll come up to pressure, the beans will cook. And then when they're done, now you can save the water that you're cooking the beans in and you can use that like vegetable stock. It is vegetable stock for other dishes. But I don't have any way to be able to store that right now, so I won't be saving it, which hurts my heart a little bit because I don't like to waste things. But is what it is, so to speak. So this is going to come up to pressure, and it will actually come up to pressure pretty quickly since the beans are still hot. And then it'll cook for 23 minutes. Same thing. I'm going to release the pressure. I'm not going to show you that. And then we're going to come back and we're going to get ready to do the chili. So cool. I'm excited. Okay, we are finally ready to cook the chili. I mean, we've been cooking. So here are my red beans. And get a nice close look there. I actually overcooked them by a couple of minutes. But that's fine. I don't really care. And I set the Instant Pot on saute. It's now hot. We're going to add a couple tablespoons of olive oil because we are using ground turkey, which I have previously frozen. This is about a pound and a quarter. Dumping that in to start browning it. And it's still kind of frozen, so this will take a few minutes. And while this is browning, I'm going to go ahead and get the onions cut up. And then we'll throw those in and get them kind of pre-started on the cooking as well. And then we'll be ready to add the rest of our ingredients. So, and there was when we get to the seasoning part, there was a brief commercial interruption because I had to make chili powder. I only had less than a tablespoon. And one of the tricks, guys, if you're using turkey instead of beef, you need more seasoning, like double. I don't know why, but turkey doesn't have a whole lot of flavor on its own. And in order to make it taste like what you want it to taste like, you just double the seasoning, and that'll do it. All right, let me get those onions chopping. Okay, we got the onions all chopped up. Turkey is mostly brown. We're going to go ahead and put the onions in. I think I need two hands to do that. And let's go ahead and get these stirred in a little bit and get them sauteing as well. Thought I was going to need another onion, but that actually looks pretty good. Okay, we're going to let that saute for another minute or two. Here's one of your hacks, though. You want to add your seasonings to your meat rather than to the entire concoction. So we're going to start putting our seasonings in right now. And what do we have for seasonings? we have chili powder, which I just made. And if you want to make chili powder, you can look it up online. The recipe is pretty easy. It's a combination of paprika, which is the primary ingredient, oregano, garlic powder, what else goes in there? My mind is going blank. Cayenne pepper, and cumin. So it's only 5 things. And it's the ratio in which they get mixed up that make it taste like chili powder. And usually I don't buy it at all. And, you know, so I don't know why I bought it, but I had some that I bought. And so I just made up some more to have enough to do this recipe. The recipe only calls for a tablespoon of chili powder. But that's if you're using beef. And my opinion has always been that that's never been enough. And then the other thing that I think chili always needs is an extra dose of cumin. And then I also have this hatch green chili powder. I'm going to add a little bit of that as well. So, let's do that. So we're going to start with about 2 tablespoons. Here, let's see if I can find a place to put the camera. We're going to start with about 2 tablespoons of chili powder. Pretty healthy tablespoon. Not as healthy as it's going to be, though. I think I'm going to do 3, actually. Because I like a lot of flavor. And when you're adding tomatoes to anything, it's about 3 decent-sized tablespoons of chili powder. And then I'm going to add about a tablespoon of cumin. I'd call this kind of a scant tablespoon. Kind of like that. And I think I'm going to just shake some green chili powder on. But it's got big holes. So I'm going to call that about a teaspoon, I think. And then we're going to go ahead and mix this all together. There's the steaming up the camera lens. So when you add all your seasonings first, they're absorbed by the meat, which is what helps to give the entire dish more flavor. And you're basically sauteing your seasonings along with your meat and onions. Yeah, that's starting to smell good. Okay. And then, we don't have much left to do, actually. At this point, it really becomes just dumping stuff in the Instant Pot. So we got our beans. And remember, we started with a cup of beans. So this is closer to probably 2 cans of beans. But that's the way I like it, so that's the way we're going to do it. So we're dumping our beans in. And I'm going to go ahead and stir that in. And the beans are really a bit overcooked. They could have gone for, you know, about 3 minutes less probably. But it's always a little bit of a crapshoot when you're using old beans. You just never know for sure. And then all we have left to add is our tomato sauce and our tomatoes. So we're going to get those in and we're going to put the lid on. Now here's another hint. When you're adding tomato products to a pressure cooker, it is a good idea not to mix them in. See if I can do this. My cutting board is trying to move around at the same time I'm trying to get it open. Okay, so I got petite diced tomatoes. We're going to put those in first, and they're just going right on top. And then we're going to add our tomato sauce, and that's going to go right on top. And I'm not going to mix it in because when you're using tomato products, they may, cancel the saute, they may actually scorch on the bottom of the pan. And I am going to add just a tiny bit of water. The recipe calls for a cup of water. I'm putting in about 1/4 cup on top of there. And we're going to go ahead and put the lid on. Come on. And then this is going to run for 15 minutes. Actually, I'm only going to do it for about 13 minutes. That'll be plenty. And now I got to clean up the mess in my tiny kitchen. But, you know, I'll get back with you when it's all done and we'll see how we did. Well, it's all done. I've released the pressure. And you can do either a quick release or a natural release. I let it do its own thing for half an hour. And then I did the quick release after that. So you can see the tomato sauce is still all floating on the top here. We're going to go ahead and stir this up. And then I'm going to get out a spoon and I'll give it a taste. And then we're going to let it sit here and cool down for quite a bit because it's quite hot. And a lot of this is going to go straight into the freezer. Alright, so that looks pretty good, huh? What do you think? Does it look good to you? Looks good to me. Let's give it a taste. It warmed up outside. I took my long sleeve shirt off and put shorts back on. Pretty good. Good flavor, not super hot. The beans are a little bit mushy, but I'm okay with that actually. And I like the petite diced tomatoes in here instead of the regular sized diced tomatoes. Yeah, I'm going to leave that just like that. So, thank you so much for coming along to my tiny RV kitchen. And we're going to enjoy the rest of the day and then get this packaged up after it cools down a bit. And we'll see you next time. But let me know what you think of this recipe in the comments down below. And stay tuned when we roll the credits at the very end here for our channel members. Bye for now.